Oh, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasara Gaur Bhaktavarni Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopika Vinashama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Swami Veda Bhaktavarni Ki Nita Gaur Pramanandi. All glories to small devotees, all glories to small devotees, all glories to small devotees, all glories to Shiguru Angaranga, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatam Vyasam Stojayam Udirayat Astapreshu Badri Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttamashloke Bhaktir Bhakti Nashtaki. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead Narayan, unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as a irrevocable fact. So today we are reading from Canto 4, Chapter 24. Today we're doing text 56. The chapter is entitled Chanting the Song Sung by Lord Shiva. So we had a very beautiful verse yesterday. And today also the purport and verse are really sweet. So Yatra nirvishtam aranam kritanto na vimanyate vishvam vidyan virya sarya vishpurjita burva Yatra aranam kritanto na vimanyate vishvam vidvamshayan virya shaurya vishpurjita burva Yatra nirvishtam aranam kirtanto na vimanyate vishva vidvamshayan virya shaurya vishpurjita burva
Yatra nirvishtam kritanto na vimanyate Vishvam viravasmayam virya Soya vishpurjita bhuva
Yatra nirvishtamanam Kritanto na vimanyate Vishvam vidvam sayandira Sharya vishpurjita bhuva Yatra nirvishtamanam Kritanto na vimanyate Wang Sayam Virya
Vishwamitra
Shaya Vispujita Prabha
Shaya Vishwamitra Prabha.
Anyone else? All right. Yatra, we're in. Nirvishtam, Nirvishtam Aranam, a completely surrendered soul. Krita Antaha, invincible time. Na Abhimanyate, does not go to attack. Vishvam, the entire universe. Vidvamshayan, by vanquishing. Virya, prowess. Shoya, influence. Vishpurjita, simply by expansion. Burva, of the eyebrows. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. Simply by expansion of his eyebrows, invincible time personified can immediately vanquish the entire universe. However, formidable time does not approach the devotee who has taken complete shelter. Please repeat. Simply by expansion of his eyebrows. Invincible time personified can immediately vanquish the entire universe. However, formidable time does not approach the devotee who has taken complete shelter at your lotus feet. Purports. In the Bhagavad Gita 10:34, it is said that the Lord, in the shape and form of death, destroys all a person's possessions. Mrityu sarva harash chaham. I am all devouring death. The Lord, in the shape of death, takes away everything that is created by the conditioned soul. Everything in this material world is subject to perish in due course of time. However, all the strength of time cannot hamper the activities of a devotee, for a devotee takes complete shelter under the lotus feet of the Lord. For this is a devotee free from formidable time. All activities of the karmis and jnanis, which have no touch of devotional service, are spoiled in due course of time. The material success of the karmis is destined to be destroyed. Similarly, the impersonal realization attained by the jnanis is also destroyed in due course of time. Aruya Krit Param Tata Patyat Ado Nadritya Yusman Angrayaha. Bhagavad Gita 10:32. That's actually a famous verse. To say nothing of the karmis, the jnanis undergo severe austerities to attain the impersonal Brahmajyoti. But they do not find the lotus feet of the Lord. They fall down again into this material existence. Unless one is fully situated in unalloyed devotional service, there is no guarantee of liberation. Even if one is elevated to the heavenly planets or to the impersonal Brahman effulgence, a devotee's achievement, however, is never lost due by the influence of time. Sorry, something just flew into my eyes. All right, guys. I apologize. Okay, sorry, let me read that sentence again. A devotee's achievement, however, is never lost by the influence of time. Even if a devotee cannot completely execute devotional service, in his next life, he begins from the point where he left off. Such an opportunity in jnanis, whose achievements are destroyed. Sabhakta's achievement is never destroyed, for it goes on perpetually, be it complete or incomplete. This is the verdict of all Vedic literatures. Suchinam Shimatam Yehe Yoga Barashta Vijayante. If one is unable to complete the process of Bhakti Yoga, he is given a chance in his next life to take birth in a pure family of devotees. In such families, a person can have a good opportunity to further progress in devotional service. When Yamaraj, the superintendent of death, was instructing his assistants, he told them not to approach the devotees. The devotees should be offered respect, he said, but do not go near them. Thus, the devotees of the Lord are not under the jurisdiction of Yamaraj. Yamaraj is a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he controls the death of every living entity. Yet he has nothing to do with the devotees. Simply by blinking his eyes, time personified can destroy the entire cosmic manifestation. But he has nothing to do with the devotee. In other words, devotional service, which is rendered by the devotee in this lifetime, can never be destroyed by time. Such spiritual assets remain unchanged beyond the influence of time. Om again, it's Rinam Dishakaran Shlakaya Chaksharam Manitaminata Asmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Mano Bishtam Stapitam Yana Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kiramayam Dirati Swabharantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Taparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Shah Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raganaptam Vikam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prajana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shiva Shakambitamsha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radhakanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhate Devi Paramami Haripre Vancha Kalpatru Vishakri Pacha Patitanam Pavnevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Shri Kanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Giradhara Shivasadi Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we have a verse in the purport here in which Prabhupada pretty much says it all. You know, you ever get these verses sometimes and you think, how can I add to that? Especially if you give class quite often. Sometimes you purport that's just fantastic. And I mean, all the purports, of course, are Srila Prabhupada are fantastic. But, you know, there are some in particular where, you know, Prabhupada just lays out the whole philosophy right there. And it makes you want to say, so are there any questions or comments? Because you feel like you can't do it justice. And, yeah. Yeah, I've seen other people do that before too. But you know, I since this is such a fantastic purport, I will try to speak a little bit of realization that I might have on it, and then hopefully you guys can share your realizations too. But this purport is talking about how he is formidable time. And in time, in due course of time, it destroys everything, and especially anything that a conditioned soul creates in this material world. I think if we all think about it, we've lost several things that we're attached to in this life. I remember when I did the course for Karuna Care, I had to take this one little part of it. It was called The Impact of Loss and Grief. And so part of this course was we had to do like a timeline from, our earliest memory up until like our present life. And we had to write, our ages and the timeline. And we had to write down significant losses that we've had. And the whole point of this was to show, how one gets affected, by losing things that are very important to them, or, one can act out in certain ways. And so just if we look back at our own life, time has already taken away so much, right? If you think maybe you lost your dog, and maybe you lost your best friend. In my case, I lost my childhood best friend due to a infection. Some people lost their grandparents. You lose sometimes your childhood home. If you live long enough, you start to see technology start to change, and you lose even things that you had before, like VCRs and regular TVs, and so time destroys everything. And it's kind of Krishna showing us, how slowly time takes away everything from us. Older, time takes away even more. We lose the energy that we once had when we were young. People joke about it all the time. Sometimes you'll see these. I've seen several TikTok videos. Me at 20 before I went out, and it's like 11 o'clock, and the person's wide awake, and they're calling their friends, and they're like, okay, yeah, you want to meet up here, meet up there. Me at 35 at 10 o'clock, sleep. And it's a joke. But the point is it's showing that, over time, we start to lose things. Our, energy, vitality. As we get older, even more goes. The health starts to go. We lose our hearing, eyesight. Just about everybody 50 and older wears eyeglasses. Even if they never needed glasses when they were young, all of a sudden now you need glasses to read. Why is that? Because the eyesight starts to go. So you don't see really anyone above 60 that doesn't need reading glasses. Maybe you just see people above 60 that think they don't need reading glasses, but not very many people. So time takes away the eyesight. When I was at home with my family, and I was seeing my grandparents, I could see, with my grandmother, time is taking away her memory. Sometimes you have to tell her something 3 or 4 times because she can't remember that you told her previously. With my grandfather in the last stage of Parkinson's, time has taken away his ability to drive, to be able to walk on his own. A lot of the time I spent having to watch him to make sure that he didn't get up to leave the house because he's in danger of falling. And we might hit the floor at 20 and 30 and be fine, but you hit the floor at 80. And I never realized this. Oh, you get frail. And it was to see how time does that. Because I saw, pictures of my grandparents when they were young, and they were beautiful, attractive people and full of vitality. And I'm looking at them now, and I'm like, wow, what happened? And you see the Christian consciousness philosophy playing out of how everything is temporary. But then it was also sobering for me because I realized that's where I'm headed. That's going to happen to me. And, just looking at my life, it's kind of already happened. My body's changed so much since I was, 13, 14, 15. So really we see that whatever we have here, it is temporary. You might gain something, but if it's part of the material nature, it gets taken away eventually. A famous story that I was told in Sunday school that always sticks with me is about the man who became very greedy with his crops. He started growing crops, and then he was making a lot of money with these crops. So then he thought, let me get a little barn, fence off my crops, keep the animals out, and I can grow more. And so he grew even more. And then he thought, well, let me get a house, so I can grow more crops and make more money. And so he got a bigger house. He really, really had the cash coming in. He had a huge, huge farmhouse at this point, had the nicest John Deere tractor, all these things. Nice. And he now I'm going to take this money I made and I'm going to buy the biggest warehouse for my crops. And then I'm going to be the richest guy ever. Then I'll have made it. So that night he goes to sleep and then Death personified comes to him and says, now I'm going to take away your life. So that's what happens. When we spend our time in material activities, we become more attached to these activities. And then it becomes more difficult to detach later. Because death eventually comes. You can't avoid it. Of course, some people might try. There was a famous Halloween episode of The Simpsons. Have you guys seen this?
No.
Okay, so there was a famous Halloween episode where Homer Simpson, he's watching TV, doorbell rings. He goes and he opens the door. It's the Grim Reaper. I am death. I don't want any. Slams the door like it's a solicitor. But really, even though it's funny, death personified, it comes for everybody eventually. Everybody has to die. So the karmis, they're thinking, because Prabhupada mentions here the karmis and the gyanis. Okay, karmis are thinking, let me get a lot of pious activity so I can enjoy as much as possible in this life. And then in the next life, I can go somewhere to like a heavenly planet where I can enjoy even more. And so they try to accumulate a lot of piety. And they get a lot of enjoyment out of this. Prabhupada says, for one who worships the demigods, in the course of time, their desires are fulfilled. So they'll get what they desire. The nice wife, the nice children, the nice house, whatever people are wanting in this world nowadays. And then, because of their pious activities, they might go to some heavenly planet and they'll enjoy even more. But you know what happens on the heavenly planets? It's very nice. You never get old. The body never wrinkles. You stay looking maybe like Yamuna or, as young as Yamuna for your whole entire life. Or, but beautiful, beautiful person. You don't really have to worry so much about disease. You have one child towards the end of your life. So you're having all this good time up in the heaven. You die. But see, the thing up in the heavenly planets is that you don't have the warning that you have, here in the this material world. We can see ourselves gradually getting older, the hair turning gray, the arthritis setting in the body. These are all like the devotees take these as like warnings. Okay, my time is starting to run out here. But the danger of the heavenly planets, there's so much enjoyment that one day it ends, just like that. And then Prabhupada mentions, I can't remember if it was in a conversation or a lecture, that the person in the heavenly planets, they come back down to the earth in a tear because they're crying. Oh, I had so much enjoyment and now it's over. It's kind of like a kid, when they go over to their friend's house when they're young. And I'm sure you've all had this experience. Maybe you go spend the weekend at your cousin's. Maybe you go spend the weekend at your friend's. And you're having such a good time. And then mom says, okay, now you got to come home, and you don't want to go. And no, I don't want to go home because I have to go back to school on Monday. I don't want to. I throw many tantrums at the kid like this. Don't want to do it. So it's kind of like what the heavenly planets are like. You're having such a good time, and it's like, okay, time's up. No! So when one becomes exhausted with the activities of being a karmi, and it's like, okay, let me be a jnani. Jnani, neti. This is bad. That's bad. And so they try to become desireless. I want to detach from all this material enjoyment because it's causing me misery. So they'll try to see things for what it is. Okay, this is temporary. This body's temporary. Yeah, I'm going to die one day. Well, this is good. If they have some knowledge. And so they'll go and they'll engage in meditation and activities like this to try to detach from the world. I know I heard of one sect that, God, I can't remember the name. They will do some sadhana sometimes in front of a skeleton. So Christian monks do that? Okay, so it will remind them, it's been like what's going to become of their body. So,
It says, I am now as you will be tomorrow.
I am now as you will be tomorrow. Oh, wow. So they're trying to go in the opposite way of the Gyanis. Let's get rid of all this material attachment. Let's get rid of all this desire. Let's merge with the Brahman. But that's still some desire. That's still kind of some desire. Material enjoyment because it's causing me misery. Still, go up and they might merge with the impersonal Brahman. And it's peaceful. They don't have to worry about any of the material miseries. You're hanging out, you're enjoying in the Brahmajyoti. You feel kind of like at peace finally. No suffering here. Nothing going on. Time passes by. Nothing going on. There's nothing going on. I wonder what they're doing down there in the material world. Oh, look, there's a Sunday feast at the Hare Krishna temple. People are chanting and dancing and having a good time there. Oh, those people look like they're having a good time there. I'm alone here. What's happening? There's nothing going on here. So it's kind of like, when you go to a weekend party, you're having a good time with all your friends. And then you're like, okay, I want to be by myself. But after, being alone in the peace and by yourself, you're like, okay, I need to go be with someone. This is why, you'll see in certain horror movies, people go into like isolation and then they start to go a little crazy because there's no contact with the outside world. So Gyanis, they finally do all to merge with Brahman. But then eventually they get bored up in the Brahmajyoti because there's nothing to do up there. So then Prabhupada mentions that a lot of times they come back down as karmis. They'll do pious activities, philanthropy work, open up hospitals, dig ditches. You see these big, material charity people in the world. Gyanis will do that. So you see how the cycle, karmi to jnani, back to karmi. And you see here how time ultimately destroys everything. But Prabhupada says, but for the devotee, formidable time doesn't touch them. So there's this very nice verse here. That phone call is not important. Okay. Second canto. Second canto is full of so many amazing verses. You know what I'm going to say, don't you? What am I going to say? Ahorati vapumsham. Is that the one you thought? No, okay. Udyan ashtam chagyanaso tasyarte yat shano nitya uttama shloka vartaya. You know that one?
Yeah. That's a great verse. It's famous.
Both by rising and setting of the sun decreases the duration of life of everyone except one who utilizes the time discussing the topics of the all-good personality of Godhead. So I'll read a little bit of this purport. Prabhupada says here, this verse indirectly confirms the greater importance of utilizing the human relationship with the Supreme Lord by acceleration of devotional service. Time and tide wait for no man. So the time indicated by the sunrise and the sunset will uselessly be wasted if such time is not properly utilized for realizing identification of spiritual values. Even a fraction of the duration of life wasted cannot be compensated by any amount of gold. Human life is simply awarded to a living entity so that he can realize his spiritual identity and his permanent source of happiness. A living being, especially the human being, is seeking happiness in the situation of the living entity, but he's vainly seeking happiness in the material atmosphere. A living being is constitutionally a spiritual spark of the complete whole, and his happiness can be perfectly perceived in spiritual activities. The Lord is the complete spiritual whole. His name, form, qualities, pastimes, entourage, and personality are all identical with him. Once a person comes into contact with any of the one above mentioned energies of the Lord, the proper channel of devotional service, the door to perfection is immediately opened. So ultimately, what's mentioned here is that the conditioned souls, the karmis, the gyanis, permanent. So we see here that as a result, the are ultimately getting it, but the devotees, they get it. And so when one engages in devotional service, because devotional service is a completely spiritual activity, and any spiritual activities are eternal, therefore it is never destroyed by any amount of time. So Prabhupada alludes to this verse here in the purport, although he doesn't exactly state it, it's Bhagavad Gita 240, that for that in this path of devotional service, there's no loss. There's no loss at all. And even a slight amount, a bit of sincere devotional service can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So it's interesting that verse 240, it comes in a part of the Bhagavad Gita where Krishna has explained to Arjuna already that we're not the body, you're spirit soul. He's trying to convince Arjuna to fight through that. And then he tries to convince Arjuna to fight through doing his duty as Kshatriya. But then Krishna goes into this part where he's trying to convince Arjuna, he's telling Arjuna to give up the result of his activities. He's starting to talk about bhakti a bit. He's saying that a little bit of advancement on this path of bhakti, it can protect you from all things. So the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, it has kind of like the whole Bhagavad Gita, and it's in one chapter. That's why it's so great. So this wonderful thing about devotional service is that even a small amount you do, Krishna never forgets. You take one step towards Krishna, and he will take 10 steps towards you. And so he says, even if you don't complete your devotional service in this life, you pick up where you left off in your next life. Because Arjuna worries about this when we get to the 6th chapter. He's like, okay, well, what if one takes the spiritual path and they don't complete it? One's given up material life, they're taking the spiritual life. But what happens if I don't act? Well, Krishna says, then one takes birth in a family of devotees, or one takes birth in a rich family. So what's the benefit of taking birth in a family of devotees? Association devotees. You hear about Krishna from birth. Your parents are usually good influence. You're not exposed to all the craziness in the world. And you generally develop this attachment from Krishna, if your parents raise you right, from the time that you're young. So that stays with you through a rich family.
To work, so you can put yourself to non-material.
Yeah, you can. You don't have to worry so much about your maintenance. You have your parents have money; they take care of you. You usually have some big inheritance, so you have time for pursuing spiritual activities. But I'm about to turn this all up on its head, because Prabhupada, he would often talk about in this mood that finish your business in this one life. Because the material world, he'd often compare it to like a storeroom. In the storeroom, in the bathroom, you go, you do your business, you get out. Nobody wants to hang out for too long. The nature of the bathroom is for that type of activity. So Prabhupada would say, we should pray to Krishna that we can finish our business in this life. Because you always have your independence. So even if you take birth in a devotee family, that's not a guarantee that you go back to Godhead. It's just a guarantee that you have another opportunity. And we all know people that have taken that aren't exactly devotees because you can get distracted. I had some rich friends that they're kind of just living off of their inheritance. thinking of different ways they can enjoy, getting some yachts, flying all around the world. They used to have these reality shows back when people had cable, like MTV and stuff. And they would show, like, I don't know, different sorts of reality shows, like rich college kids, trying to enjoy their parents' wealth. So that's the downside of taking birth in a rich family, that you might not use your time for devoting to spiritual activities. So Prabhupada would say, you have everything here. So do your best to try to get finished in this life, because the opportunity is now. Of course, Krishna will never forget. He'll never forget anything you do for him, and he'll always be with you. But we have a very easy process by the chanting of the Maha Mantra. I've heard sometimes Prabhupada would say, in lectures, 16 rounds, 4 regulative principles, you follow this, taking prashad, you follow this, you can go back to Godhead in this very life. It's possible. And there's actually a story that one time, Prabhupada, when he was preaching like this, some devotee heard from some of Prabhupada's godbrothers, they were preaching, no, it takes 3 lifetimes to go back to Godhead. And Prabhupada would tell them, no, 1 life. So finally, one godbrother of Prabhupada said, well, Prabhupada is so powerful, he can 1 life. So Prabhupada is, that was his mood. Don't waste time. This human life is very short. Take this time. Hear Krishna Katha. Chant the holy name. Because Kali Yuga, it gets very rough. When I was in Florida with my family, we were talking about how we're like, man, there's so many more hurricanes than there used to be. And they're having another one right now that apparently is on the cusp of like breaking some record for the amount of like size it is. And it's slamming into Florida like tomorrow. And it's very rough because you get those and they come through and just can wipe out a town. It spins off tornadoes. It's very difficult. And so it used to be that you might get one big hurricane, but now it's like we were saying, like, wow, it's just like one after another is coming. So this is the effect of Kali Yuga. People will say, oh, global warming. This is the response. And I'm sure of course we're doing stuff to destroy this planet. But if we hear from Shastra, we know that these extreme natural disasters and things, they're signs of the age of Kali Yuga. They're signs of demonic population taking birth on the earth. Read about what was going on when Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha took birth. We had earthquakes and inauspicious planets and all sorts of things. So Kali Yuga, it's a rough age. And it's Prabhupada mentioned how, it's going to get rougher. But in this age of Kali Yuga, we're so fortunate that we have an easy process by which we can attain perfection. So if you have a human life in Kali Yuga, you're very, very lucky. That sometimes one time some sages went to Vyas when he was bathing, and they asked Vyas, what's the best age for making advancement? Vyas said, Kali Yuga. What's the best varna for making advancement? Vyas said Sudra, because Sudra serve. And why do you say Kali Yuga? Because Kali Yuga is the chanting of the Maha Mantra. And then they asked him a few more questions, but I don't want to get into the whole entire pastime. But yeah, so even Vyas confirmed Kali Yuga is actually an amazing age, because you can get all perfection by chanting of the holy name. And it's even more amazing is that Lord Chaitanya appeared in this age of Kali Yuga. And he doesn't always come in every age of Kali Yuga. So I was having a discussion yesterday with a group of people, and we were talking about how, the different processes for spiritual advancement. And, how it used to be, you had to be able to meditate. You had to be able to go to the forest for thousands of years and sit and meditate and do all these great austerities. But, you might not get Goloka Vrindavan from all that. You might just get the Vaikuntha planets. But Lord Chaitanya, We're so fortunate that Lord Chaitanya came to give this love of Radha and Krishna. It's actually very intimate, And so he came to give the highest fallen. So we have a very, very good opportunity. And so that's why Prabhupada didn't want us to waste time. He wanted us to go for it. Because, you might not, by chanting the holy name, you might get some really good situation in your next life. But, you might have a very beautiful body, some rich family, some rich parents. They might be devotees, but, you could get distracted. And I've seen, people born in devotee families sometimes get distracted. Maybe they got good devotee parents, but the parents also got money and they're also beautiful. And then, everybody's throwing. So the opportunity is now. We have it. Take it. Prabhupada didn't waste time. That's why he spent time, translating all these books, getting up at 1 o'clock in the morning so that we would have it. And at the end, he said, I gave you everything you need for going back to Godhead. So yeah, in this verse, we can see that once again, the urgency to become Krishna conscious and the influence of time, how it takes away everything. But for the devotee, for one engaged in Krishna consciousness, one doesn't have to worry. One doesn't ultimately have to worry about it because Krishna will take care of them. If one stays focused in Krishna consciousness, you can become like Dhruva Maharaj. What happened to Dhruva Maharaj at the end? It came, and Dhruva Maharaj, he paid his respects to all the sages, and then he's going to get on the airplane, and what happens? He steps on the head of death. He uses the head of death to step up on the airplane. People are normally terrified of death. But Dhruva Maharaj, he's stepping on the head of death to get up on the and Prabhupada mentions in the purport of that verse that death personified came to offer his respects to Dhruva Maharaj. And he compares death to like for the devotee, death is like a cat holding a kitten in the mouth. They don't have to worry. The cats, they catch rats and they'll tear those things apart. Lilith and I both like cats, so we know this very well. So for the devotee, they don't have this to worry about. Yamaraj, he doesn't come after them. He doesn't touch them. The associates don't come after them. And you don't necessarily have to be the most exalted devotee for Yamaraj not to come for you. There are stories. People have written their personal stories online. There was this one guy who wrote, how he became a devotee. And he said that he got a Shish Upanishad, stuck it on a shelf. He couldn't understand it, so he just put it on a shelf and left it there. And, he was really into heavy intoxicants. And I think he overdosed on something, and he was lying in his bed, and he was about to leave his body. And he said these ghastly figures were coming, and he could hear them talking. Like almost like they were talking about what should we do with this person. And then they kind of concluded, okay, he has to come with us. So he said they were coming. They were going to take me with them. And they said I couldn't do anything about it. I was totally helpless. But the book that was on the shelf fell off the shelf. And they saw the picture of Vishnu. And then they left. And then so he then goes to, then he like realized, oh, wow, what's in this book that's so amazing. And then he picked it up and he read it. I wish I read this story about 10 years ago. I wish I could maybe I can find it again, look it up again if you guys would like to read it as well. But anyway, it's one of those things that always stuck with me. So yeah, the point is, this is where we can see a practical material example of how a little bit can protect one in Krishna consciousness. So I should probably stop here for questions or comments since we got a few minutes left. So, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Thank you very much. All right. Any thoughts, realizations? Yes, Prabhu.
Have you heard anything of, let's say somebody is executing devotional service, they're doing nicely, they are not able to escape in this time due to some faults, of their service maybe, and they come back, but they get some nice. Do they get their actual same parents as souls? Because I know during Ekadasi, you can liberate your ancestors. Will they come back with you into that better situation? or do they sort of fend for themselves, if you will, and you get a new set of parents sort of early? Is there any information on this topic?
Okay, let me make sure I understand your question. So if you're coming back in a better situation, do your ancestors ultimately come back with you? Your parents, ancestors, they come back in the same situation with you? I've heard that, like it can happen. Hear from astrologers that, your ancestors can come and take birth with you. But, ultimately, I think it kind of depends too on the situation. And maybe they're not necessarily your parents. Krishna could, because you've taken to devotional service, Krishna's in charge, right? So he's going to put you in a situation that's best for you to make further advancement, or give you at least the opportunity, put you in a good situation where you have a better opportunity for making more advancement. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
No, as far as I know, injunction that states that your parents come back. They say if you become a pure devotee, you do liberate your parents, but they don't necessarily come back with you. You usually get new parents every birth. Sometimes I've heard from astrologers that a lot of times the wife or the husband will become the parent in the next life. It happens quite often, according to certain astrologers.
Oh, yeah, I talked to one astrologer who said he did a chart with a girl where you could see that her husband was her brother in her previous birth. So because there's attachment there, and sometimes like different souls. We can kind of take birth in different situations. You becomes your friend later becomes your sister. But ultimately, when you take the devotional service, your family, your ancestors will get liberated, but Krishna will also put you where he's.
I know one person in particular the astrologer, who's a very, very good astrologer, the best in the world, told him that his mother was his wife in his past life.
That happens.
And it's very, very obvious in their current relationship that they are extraordinarily attached to each other to a degree I've never seen before. So
That's why when I went, I challenged devotees the first day I went to the temple. I said, well, if I've lived these lives, how come I can't remember? He said, well, if we could remember our past lives, it might just disturb us. Yeah.
we call it Freudian complex right there.
All right. Any realizations you guys had on this purport? About formidable time. All right. Okay. Well, I think breakfast is coming on anyway. So, going through Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.